Welcome back, my rogues. Today's question is, what are some wholesome historical facts not taught in school? Hope you enjoy, and check me out on Instagram. In 2006, while the Ivory Coast was in the midst of a civil war, the opposing sides agreed to a ceasefire so that they could all watch the World Cup. The break-in fighting paved the way for a peace agreement a year later. Abraham Lincoln grew his famous beard because a little girl said he would look better with one. When the pharaoh Mentuhotep II's harem daughter died around 2050 BC, he mourned. She was only 5 years old. Her tomb, touchingly, was inscribed with a pen name Might. This is translated to kitten. The F1 German Grand Prix, in 1976, after Niki Lauda crashed while hitting a barrier and catching a light, rival drivers Arturo Merzario, Guy Edwards, Harold Ertl and Brett Lunger all stopped their cars and ran to Lauda's aid. There are many such instances of this happening during the 50s right through the 80s, of championship drivers forfeiting a win to save a rival's life. Polish army had a goddamn bear fighting on their side in World War II. Pirate ships were actually pretty great, relatively speaking. They were very democratic and pirate crews were pretty well cared for. Also, they took sexual assault against women very seriously, i.e., they killed you for it. Ringo Starr once decided the Beatles didn't need him and decided to take a holiday with the intention of never coming back. When John, Paul and George found out, they went all the way to where he was staying just to convince him to come back. The candy bomber. After World War II ended and Berlin was divided, the UK and US dropped food into West Berlin by plane. One pilot, Gail Halvorsen, started to donate his candy rations to the children, and soon other pilots started doing the same. To let the children know that it was his plane, the one with the candy, they would wiggle the plane's wings before the drop. Word spread and more children would come, and it started a new PR campaign and started to change the mindset that Americans had of giving food aid to Europe. I always thought the story was really sweet. Pugs were bred by the Chinese to sit on the laps of emperors. They were, quite literally, designed to be lazy. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, there were a few Supreme Court cases about the color of margarine. The dairy industry couldn't compete as well with margarine dyed the color of butter. So some states tried to pass laws saying margarine had to be pink, which the Supreme Court declared unconstitutional. However, they also decided that yellow margarine was defrauding the public. So for a while margarine was sold white with a packet of yellow dye that you could mix in at home. TLDR, they could believe it was not butter. Not a single one of my history teachers told us about the Christmas truce in the First World War. During World War II, a German fighter pilot spotted a damaged American bomber, and rather than shooting it down, he decided to escort it to safety. Decades later, the two pilots found each other and became friends. On Christmas Day 1914, both of the sides of WW1 celebrated Christmas together with songs and games. This type of celebrations happened over the whole front in Belgium and France. The soldiers talked to each other like they weren't in war together. Many soldiers wrote in their diary that they didn't expected the enemy to be so kind and friendly, and that they wanted to meet with him when the war was over. But a few days later, the leaders of the armies found out about the celebrations and forbid any future meetings between the two sides. There were a few attempts to reconnect during Easter and Christmas, but the soldiers who attempted were punished or killed. Until the invention of submarine warfare, it was widely considered an abominable war crime to sink a ship and not try to save its crew. Sinking civilian shipping was completely off limits if preparations were not made to rescue the entire civilian crew and transport them to safety at a port somewhere. It is still technically considered part of customary international law, but it wasn't enforced in WW1 or WW2 because both sides committed this war crime. Tu quoque lat, meaning U2 was a valid legal defense in war crimes trials. No Germans could be convicted of a war crime if they could show that the Allies had committed the same crime. An attempt was made to charge a German admiral for having a submarine attack merchant shipping and not save the drowning crew. But he was not convicted, because British and American naval forces had done the same thing. Besides, during WW2, Qantas Airlines has never had a lethal commercial jet plane crash since its formation in 1921. My Balkanic friends have told me that the bitter combats of the wars after the breakup of Yugoslavia used to stop because both sides liked watching Mexican soap operas. The only reason the Pilgrims stopped at Plymouth Rock was they were running out of beer. They had to grow barley and hops. I was on vacation in Germany over spring break. They had these frog fences. These fences keep the frogs from crossing the roads and getting run over. At the end of the day, somebody comes by and gathers the frogs and helps them cross the road. Constantinople wouldn't have fallen to the Ottomans if one guy didn't forget to close a door that lead into the city. After Commodore Perry forced the opening of Japan to foreign trade, Japan signed many unequal treaties with Western nations. 1888, Mexico signed another treaty with Japan, but Mexico viewed Japan as an equal. The 1888 Mexican-Japanese Treaty was the first time a Western nation treated Japan as an equal. In the late 1930s, fascism was advancing through the world and no one dared to oppose it. Except for Mexico. Mexico was the only country that openly protested against the Japanese invasion of Manchuria, the Italian invasion of Ethiopia, Italian and German involvement in the Spanish Civil War along with the USSR, and finally, the German annexation of Austria. US Army here. Thankfully my story didn't make it out of basic, but damn, I would like to punch the recruiter that put her in square in the jaw. This girl was 52. And probably weighed less than 90 pounds. She was so frail she looked like she was going to snap under the weight of her lunch tray. She was given twice as much time to eat and twice as much food as the rest of us in an effort to put some weight on her. She never ate it, just poked it for 20 minutes then threw it away. She was clearly developmentally disabled. Soldiers call each other retarded all the time as a joking insult. This wasn't the case. She was actually developmentally disabled. During reception 12 weeks of in-processing before actual basic training starts, I had to teach her how to button her pants, lace her boots, and do her laundry. She was young, maybe 18. Her boyfriend was over 40. In reception, she would be on the phone with him every walking moment possible. She was caught on multiple occasions furiously masturbating in the corner of the bay while on the phone with him. She couldn't understand that it was inappropriate. Once we shipped to actual training, she ended up in my company but a different training platoon than me. She made it 4 weeks before they took her weapon away because she wouldn't stop flagging people, accidentally aiming it at someone with it. Also, she could barely hold it up. The 9LBM16A2 was too heavy for her. She got moved to the separation company around week 5. Never saw her again. That was 9 years ago. I think about her sometimes, and wonder if she's okay. The time the Liechtenstein army went to war with allegedly 80 men and returned with 81. When an Italian soldier who defected over to Liechtenstein. There was a dog in WW1 that helped sniff out mustard gas named Sergeant Stubby. It's WW1 not WW2. There was a huge fight about African Americans using the public pool in Mr. Rogers' actual neighborhood, so he made an episode on his show where he and our African American guest were sharing the kiddie pool and talking about being nice to people even if they look or sound different. He taught a whole generation that ration my SNT fair alright. Pirates are average people. They tended to give mercy to those who surrendered, had democracy, good medical care, and it was an actual way for a woman to have a good profession at the time. Homework was originally a punishment for bad students and now it is a regular thing. The Choctaw Nation, a Native American tribe who was still recovering from being exiled to bumfuck nowhere Oklahoma a couple decades earlier, raised 170 to send to Ireland to help with the ongoing potato blight famine. The India-Pakistan border is one of the most disputed ones in the world, giving rise to the world-renowned hostilities between India and Pakistan. There was a time once, a prominent Indian singer named Lata Mangeshkar had gone to perform a concert for the soldiers. There, as soon as the show began, Pakistani troops started firing rounds in the air, yelled obscenities and said, "We want to hear her voice too." So Indian forces turned up the speakers and pointed them towards the border. Pakistani forces returned the favor when prominent Pakistani singers came to perform for them. Benjamin Franklin loved butterballs. Sea otters tend to hold hands when sleeping so they don't drift apart from their companions. Tutankhamun's most prized possession was his meteoritic iron dagger. Museum visitors are impressed by the gold. Napoleon was not actually small. He was 57 average height back then. The reasons rumors spread about him being small was propaganda coming from the opposing army to rally troops and tease the French. This propaganda was led by the opposing general who was in fact 411. Ironic, isn't it? During World War I on Christmas Eve the Brits and Germans started singing Silent Night, Holy Night. Then come morning, they hung out and played football, but they probably had some awkward conversations. Pennsylvania was founded by Quakers who believed that the light of God shined in everyone, regardless of ethnicity or religion. They were known for treating the indigenous people relatively well and welcomed the first synagogue in North America in Philadelphia. Buckle up, ladies, because I have a story. Me, former USAF officer and commander of a security forces squadron. We basically did law enforcement, flight line security, and force protection. We got in a new troop out of basic training tech school. You'll call him Snuffy. Snuffy was literally the only troop I ever encountered in my 20-year career who came to his first duty station with an Article 15 already on his record. That was unheard of in the USAF. If you get in that kind of trouble in basic or tech school, they usually just boot you. Like all first-term newbies, Snuffy has to spend a month at the base FTAC First-Term Airmen's Center where they basically teach the young folks about the base, dorm life, financial responsibility, etc. Snuffy gets kicked out of FTAC after 1 week due to not showing up and tardiness. At this point, we don't know what to do with Snuffy. H is a major fuck-up. In our career field you have to carry a firearm every day. And this kid is so stupid we can't arm him. We are forced to relieve him duty, meaning he goes into limbo where he can only do stuff like pick up trash, light administrative work, etc., while we try to take steps to see if he can still be administratively discharged since HE has been on active duty only briefly. While HE is relieved of duty, he starts being late to work. This is a really big deal at this point because he basically works directly for my senior staff. This gets him in legal trouble and him forced to consider having him punished for dereliction of duty. Snuffy continues to spiral out of control. He married a he married a local woman he just met. They move into base housing. He keeps getting in trouble while his other legal issues are still working their way through the staff judge advocate. For example, he spray paints his car with a rattle can, blowing spray paint all over his neighbor's car. He keeps dogs locked in his garage and never cleans up their poop, breaking all kinds of housing requirements, etc. This gets him kicked out of base housing. His wife leaves him shortly after he gets a rental in town. His legal issues with me are finally coming to a head when I get a tip that Snuffy has been working as an OSI Office of Special Investigation informant in a law enforcement case they're running off base. Now, I was the chief of police for the entire base. This was my troop. I had daily meetings with the head of the OSI where we discussed all open investigations. I was never told a thing. Turns out OSI was using Snuffy as an informant with some low-level druggies in town. They had recruited him as soon as he arrived on base and entered the First-Term Airmen Center. Because he had that Article 15 from basic tech school, they pulled him into their investigation, kept him out late at night, hence him oversleeping, and just used him incessantly. When it all came to light, the OSI detachment commander finally admitted I was furious and told me to just punish him fully. Because according to OSI what they had him doing didn't excuse him from his other issues. Ultimately, I got Snuffy administratively discharged and didn't take any judicial action against him. He wasn't fit for military life. I never really hammered the kid or was obviously below average intelligence and OSI exploited that with no remorse. After Snuffy's discharge, my chief, First Sergeant, and I went out and bought the kid a bunch of stuff he needed, clothes, food, etc., to try to get him on his feet. All of us were just disgusted, not by Snuffy, but by the way we completely failed him. He was a fuck-up, for sure, but what was done to that kid was unforgivable. I had a guy whose house was such a disgusting pigsty that the whole unit had to go clean it up for him due to him being in base housing. He let his dog's crap all over his house and never picked it up. There were bottles full of piss in his closet, and the cherry on top was that the genius sprinkled used Magnum condoms around the house when he knew the unit was coming to clean. He is easily the biggest piece of dog shit I have ever met and is now living extremely comfortably on disability welfare without lifting a finger for what are almost certainly completely fraudulent reasons. During the Revolutionary War, a British general left his dog behind during a chaotic retreat. When the Continental Army found the lost dog, George Washington had a messenger go under a truce flag to return the dog to its owner. Wojtek was a bear that served him the Polish 2nd Artillery Unit. During his service, Wojtek was huge moral boost to the men, fighting multiple men in wrestling matches, eating lit cigarettes, and even foiling a Saudi Arabian plot to attack the camp by discovering a spy in the shower. Wojtek's unit was caught in artillery battle. Wojtek looked around and began carrying artillery shells to the launchers like the men around him. For his service, Wojtek was promoted to corporal and was given an honorable discharge. Wojtek was placed in a local zoo where he was everyone in a while. Known to appear at a child's birthday party. Fellow servicemen from his unit were also known to come by and feed him lit cigarettes, where he also sadly died. In his honor, the Polish artillery unit changed its logo to a bear holding an artillery shell. The pyramids were already 1,000 years old by the time the last woolly mammoth population died off on an island off the northeast coast of Russia. JFK, Oswald, and Jack Ruby all died in the same hospital. Captain Morgan actually existed. https://en Wikipedia Wiki Captain Morgan Media File Captain Morgan Bottle JPG The face of the well-loved rum Captain Morgan brand was a real guy. He was a Welsh privateer who fought alongside the English against the Spanish in the Caribbean in the 1660s and 1670s. His first name was Henry and was knighted by King Charles II of England. His exact birth date is unknown, but it was sometime around 1635. He died in Jamaica in 1688, apparently very rich. There is a lion statue in Venice that has Viking ruins graffiti on it. That it's Obfuscate Day. JFK WASNT shot, his head just did that on its own. Tea used to be more valuable than currency, so was often used when trading instead of coin. When persecuted Zoroastrians from Persia came to the kingdom of Sanjan in the west coast of India as refugees, the king wasn't sure if he wanted to offer them refuge. So he sent him a full glass of milk implying his kingdom is full. The leader of the Zoroastrians added some sugar to the milk and sent it back to imply the refugees would become part of the kingdom and make it sweeter. They got to stay, and they were a micro-minority. They are one of the most successful community which has left its imprint on every aspect of India. Columbus had a beloved cat named Nicholas, and he actually only chose to sail with the Spanish flag because Queen Isabella famously loved cats. I gave a hamburger to my dog. She is good girl, so this counts.
Hope you liked this video. Stay frosty my rebels.